World. Today is Monday, April 22nd, 2024, and you are viewing and listening to Issues and Answers on the WCEG Talk Radio Network. WCEG stands for Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. I am your host, Norman A. Carter Jr., and our goal is to enlighten your perspectives about our environment, our socio-political struggles, and those veins of classism and racism that make all of our lives more difficult than they should be. You know what I mean? In so doing, our hope is to bring us all together in a wonderful tapestry of brotherhood and sisterhood bound together by threads of understanding, respect, tolerance of our physical, racial, and religious differences. Now, I'm going to sort of divert from my normal opening because we have so much to get into. And all of you who are listening now already know how to communicate. So later in the program, I'm going to jump into how others may join our programs in the future. But for right now, let me just say this. Please understand that the topics and opinions on Issues and Answers are those of the host and my guests and not the WCEG Network. So leave my boss alone. So let's get to moving on this installment of Issues and Answers by welcoming our special guest, Ms. B Thassanee Gutter-Parker, who is a candidate for Judge of the Superior Court of Gwinnett County. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited about being here.
We are so excited to have you. And I did a little research on your background, so I believe I can say to you, estamos encanto de conocerte, which for you other folks means we are delighted to meet you. Just wanted to say that Mrs. Gutter-Parker was a high school honors graduate and inducted into the National Spanish Honor Society. One such language dear to my heart, dear to my heart. Jumping right in, I don't know how many people. I don't know too many people who have graduated from high school and received both a full academic scholarship to a university and then another full academic scholarship to attain your law degree. That speaks highly of you. You are a Wisconsin native. What brought you to Gwinnett County, Georgia?
Gosh, at the time, no husband, no children, but let me back up for a second. Let me back up for a second. The full academic scholarships, that speaks highly of my parents. And okay. So I am so, very, very proud of them. My father passed 28 months ago, but he is still in my heart. And I think of him every single day. My parents were married for almost 60 years. But yes, that is a true testament of them. And before I tell you about how I moved down here to Georgia and all of that, I would also like to say that my youngest daughter is a Badger. So she is at the University of Wisconsin right now. And I am thrilled. This is her second year. And she too is on scholarship. So I am super, super, super excited. And she's in the business school just like her mommy. And one day she wants to be an attorney. So I am beyond stoked. Really, I am. So
surely an example of the apple not falling too far from the tree. Absolutely.
That's an expression my mother says all the time. Yes, yes, yes. Yes.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm definitely a proud mother. My oldest daughter is a Hollywood makeup artist. So she hangs out with the beautiful people.
Wow.
So very proud mother. Yes, yes. So I moved down in about 1996. At the time, the Olympics was here in Atlanta. And no husband, no children. My cousins lived down here. Dr. Cassandra Wanzo was here. So it was great to move down and spend time with cousins and see my relatives. And so besides the traffic, I loved it here.
Fantastic.
And decided to stay, got married, children, and you essentially know the rest of the story. Here we are 28 years later.
Well, we're going to get our audience involved with the rest of the story. Uh, being a judge is typically a nonpartisan position, but I noticed you have a wonderful political stew, I like to call it, of endorsements uh, from the former and last Democratic Governor Roy Barnes, who is one of my heroes. He sacrificed his political career to minimize the flag of the first insurrection on the Georgia flag. You have Georgia State Representative Derek McCullum, a Republican. You have Janelle King, who I watch every Sunday. She is a Republican consultant and local television pundit.
Yes.
U.S. Congressman David Scott, a Democrat, and so many others. Uh, too long to name on here because we only have a little bit of time. But in this age of political divisiveness, how are you able to receive endorsements from such a disparate group?
So a lot of people have asked me that, and that's very interesting. So also, I'm a Governor Brian Kemp board appointee.
All
And
right.
so it's almost like a political miracle when you are a Republican Governor Kemp board appointee, and then you have the endorsement of our last Democratic governor, Governor Roy Barnes, which means a lot to me. And I remember, I hear what you were saying about the flag issue, but he's just so much more, and he's so deep, if you will. And I
Mm-hmm.
say that because not only is he our former governor, but he is also an attorney. He's a world-renowned attorney. So he knows what goes into great judges.
Mm-hmm.
And not to make this political at all, but the facts are that very recently he had testified in the Fani Willis hearings with, and I will, the hearings with regard to who was actually asked to handle the special prosecution for the Trump trials.
Right.
And so he actually testified. And so because he testified, he's been out there yet again. So his name has been a household name, despite the fact that he was our governor, years ago. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm very proud of his endorsement. I'm proud of the fact that I have a lot of Republicans and a lot of Democrats. But before I'll say that, why that's the case, I also have mayoral endorsements. And I'm the only candidate in the race that has any mayors in Gwinnett County to support or endorse. So that's huge in and of itself as well. And as you know, mayors and councilmen are nonpartisan.
Yeah.
So we have that. But with regard to the Democrats and Republicans endorsing me, it says a lot because you want judges who are going to be fair. And so it says that the people who have been elected, who have endorsed me, truly believe that I will be a great judge, not only for the citizens of these very cities, but Gwinnett County in general. So I'm excited.
Speaking of Gwinnett County in general, I know two names that I saw on there: uh, Chad Lindsay and his late father, uh, Thomas. Uh, those are significant endorsements in this area. Believe me. Uh,
Absolutely, absolutely. So interestingly, yesterday, gosh, a lot of things I guess happened yesterday. We had a candidate forum at New Bethel Church, AME Church. And afterwards, I stopped by the Livesey home. So
okay.
it's interesting that you would mention that because there was no way you would know that.
Yeah.
And Miss Dorothea and we spoke for about an hour, and we sat down and we talked and we looked at pictures and we talked about her husband, her late husband,
Mm-hmm.
who passed this past December. God
Right.
rest his soul. And he did so much for the community.
Sure did.
We talked about Chad,
Mm-hmm.
her wonderful grandson. And I was grateful. Before Mr. Livesey died, he had endorsed me, and his grandson had endorsed me. And Mrs. Livesey had gone by to drop off some flowers. She and we've had a relationship over the years, and she's just such a wealth of information. And then sometimes Mr. Livesey and we would sit around and just talk and talk and talk. And he had so many stories. Oh my goodness. So it was a
Yeah.
blessing to really hang out with Mrs. Livesey on yesterday and reconnect and talk about a lot. But let me back up for a second as well. You had mentioned Janelle King
Yes.
just a moment ago.
Mhm.
And yesterday on the Georgia Gang, Janelle King actually did a shout out
All right.
to me. So I thought that was very interesting. In the winners and losers segment, in which they were talking about Raphael Warnock, our
Mhm.
senator, and Senator John Ossoff, and Alejandro Mayorkas, in the Atlanta airport. In that same segment, they mentioned little old me. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. Politics is interesting.
Yes,
You never know what you'll hear on winners and losers.
this is true. I actually recorded it yesterday because I was rather busy, but I will watch it later on this evening. Thank you.
Right there at the end. Absolutely. Yes, Janelle King.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, she's highly thought of in this area, as is the Livesies. For those of you who are not in Gwinnett County, the Livesies are a significant part of Gwinnett County history. And I mean significant, very much so. Okay, now, why is the Superior Court Judgeship of Georgia different from other judgeships in our state?
So what's interesting about Superior Court, and which is extremely important, is this: no other judge can take away your children, because we have family law there, divorces, adoptions, and all of that. But no other judge can take away your children, your property, real estate, nor your life. So we still have the death penalty in Georgia. So Superior Court is the most important judicial seat in Georgia. Now, keep in mind, as a Superior Court judge, if the judge makes a mistake, then it may go to the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court. But many times that case is then remanded or sent back down to the Superior Court judge to correct that error. But because those decisions originate in Superior Court is one of the most important judicial seats in the entire state of Georgia.
You know, I sort of got ahead of myself here a little bit because we're having such a great time. But before I got into your candidacy for superior judgeship, judge in the Superior Court, should have mentioned a little bit about your background. I mean, you just didn't fall off the turnip truck, so to speak.
Oh.
Can you give us a little background on your experience?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I am the only candidate in this race who has prosecuted on behalf of the state of Georgia. That's important. But not only have I prosecuted, I've also represented criminal defendants. That's important because it shows that I will have balance as a judge. In addition to that, I have practiced civil law. There are only two types of law: civil law and criminal law. So, and you represent plaintiffs and defendants. So there's really four types of law, and that's it. Now, there are lots of different areas within civil law, for instance, about 30 different areas of civil law. But it's important to have balance and to be able to say, yes, I have practiced criminal law and I have practiced civil law. So one of the things about me, which is very interesting, is that years ago, I was hired by a Gwinnett law firm to litigate multi-million-dollar cases throughout the entire state of Georgia. And so what that meant was, well, one of the good things, I had an unlimited expense account. That was nice, traveling here, there, and everywhere. But I tell you, it taught me a lot about litigation, jury trials, the way courts do things, how different counties do things. And so I had the opportunity to see what works in other counties, what works in Gwinnett County, what doesn't work in other counties, and what doesn't work in Gwinnett. And so because of that, I was able to bring some of those best practices from other counties to Gwinnett. So it was a beautiful experience for me. And quite frankly, the people of Gwinnett have benefited from it. So, and let me tell you why.
Along with it.
So one of the things we did not have, and people don't believe it until they think about it, and they're like, oh yeah, that's true. We didn't have electronic filing until 2018. Now, that just seems like that was just yesterday, essentially. But Gwinnett County was so far behind, it just didn't make sense to me. You had these outer counties, which were much smaller than Gwinnett County. Now, keep in mind, Gwinnett County is the second largest county in terms of land mass. Ware County is number one, and we're the second largest county in terms of population. Fulton County is number one. We're number two. So Gwinnett County is number two land mass population-wise and with regard to population. But we did not have those different infrastructures in place that smaller counties with less population had. And it didn't make sense to me. And quite frankly, I got tired of Gwinnett County losing my files. So, you know, they say what is the expression? It's the motherwit of invention.
Yes.
And so
necessity is the motherwit of invention.
There you go. There you go. Necessity is the motherwit of invention. And so after going to the clerk of court and saying, why are we losing files? This just doesn't make sense. You know, we need electronic filing. We finally now have electronic filing. Fulton County, DeKalb County, they had their versions of a second chance court. I'll just give you another example. We did not have a second chance court or program in Gwinnett County. And so I went and I met with the district attorney, Danny Porter at the time. And I said, look, you know, we can't keep putting everybody in jail. There's a difference between those people who we are mad at, who need treatment, who need rehabilitation, versus those people who we are afraid of, who quite frankly, we need to put in jail and they need to stay in jail because they're a menace to society. So we've got to find a better way to do things. And Danny Porter said, you're right. He said, the studies have shown. Now, see, I had already done my research before I went to him. But he says, you're right. Studies have shown that recidivism or crime, repeat offenders, it decreases when you have treatment for people who offend. And so it's also less of a burden on taxpayers. You know, you have people, you don't have to pay for unemployment and childcare and all of this because people they have jobs. Now, I'll tell you that I know I'm kind of like off of what we're talking about.
No, you're running into my next question, so go right ahead.
Okay. So this is something that I find very interesting. Every dollar that we in Georgia invest in accountability, which is another word for treatment, in treatment courts, represents a diversion savings of $7.74 to taxpayers. And that comes from the Carl Vinson Institute of the University of Georgia. So we need to save taxpayers more money. To put all this money into jails and then people get out and they reoffend, it does not help. It doesn't help us. So that's why we have to have these second chance programs. And that's one of the things I would like to do as judge is to expand the second chance program that I initially championed for. So we have a second chance program, and I think the age is about up to 28 years old. But we all know people who are over the age of 28 years old who make just dumb decisions.
Yes.
You know, and so they need help too. It's just not our youthful offenders who are making dumb decisions. And some people don't know this. For instance, if you steal $501 of merchandise, that's not a misdemeanor. That's a felony. So do we want to put somebody in jail for $501? Or do we want to give them treatment and try to help them so that they don't reoffend? So, you know, there's just so much that we can do as judges and as judicial candidates to help decrease crime and decrease the mental health impact in Gwinnett County and in Georgia overall. And I know that's a long answer to your question, and I'm sorry about that, but you know what politicians are. You know how.
No. Do I? Moi?
Oh, I think you know. I think you now wear that coat as well. So
absolutely.
Congratulations again.
Absolutely.
That is so awesome.
You know, and speaking of your second chance program, I was just a guest speaker at a monthly group session held in Gwinnett County, in the Gwinnett County courtroom it's basically a second chance program for military veterans. I don't know whether you're aware of it or not, but I found that to be very interesting. Yes, most of them were not young. they were older, and the gratitude, number one, that I saw there, and the growth that I saw are just amazing. So that's just one of the portions of your 20-point Safer Gwinnett plan. Can you explain to our audience a little bit about that in the time that we have?
Yes. So crime is complicated. If it weren't complicated, it would be solved by now, and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm the only candidate that has a 20-point Safer Gwinnett plan. And some of the things that I would like to expound upon is, one, the Second Chance program that I just talked about. That's part of my 20-point Safer Gwinnett plan. Another program is a version of the Scared Straight program. Are you familiar with that?
Absolutely.
Are you? Okay,
Yeah.
so what's your understanding of the Scared Straight program?
Well, there's usually they have offenders who counsel younger at-risk youth.
Yes.
I think that's basically a good way to put it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so it has worked in other jurisdictions, and we have Project Strap with Judge Rodney Harris, who's a juvenile court judge, but there are other versions of that program. And let me tell you a little bit about what I foresee for Gwinnett County. I am a member of the Council of Youth Anti-Drug Incorporated. We originated here in Gwinnett County. We are in some of the middle schools and the high schools. So we're already in Gwinnett County. We are an international organization. Again, we started in Gwinnett County.
Okay.
And so we are in different states, including Milwaukee, Wisconsin, my home, and Dr. Cassandra Wanzo. That's one of our locations, but we're also worldwide. But the Council of Youth Anti-Drug Incorporated, we teach our young people to do more than just say no. We teach them coping mechanisms and things, and just teach them what they need to do. But in addition to that, well, that organization, the Council of Youth Anti-Drug Incorporated, recently we kind of merged with an organization named Georgia Advocates for Crime Prevention Incorporated. And the founder is Clayton Lee. He had an annual ceremony within the last couple of months, and our Attorney General, Chris Carr. Now, you know, he's the king with regard to, enforcement of the laws here. He's our Attorney General, so he is the king in that regard. And so our two organizations have merged. And so we're in the process of coming up with a platform and a plan to teach our children what it is that they need to be aware of with regard to not only drugs, but also crime. For instance, like we talked about the $501 of merchandise, that'll land you in Superior Court versus state court, which handles misdemeanors. Our children need to know possession of crime, of drugs more than an ounce. All of that. These are things that they need to know because they have to be learned. And we are not doing a good job in our schools teaching them about some of these things. These are facts of life.
Yes.
And so we can't, shield our children from everything. So that's another one of the programs with regard to the 20-point Safer Gwinnett plan. And I'll give you another example, a judicial efficiency committee. If you are in Fulton County, you can get a divorce faster there because they use their retired judges who do temporary mediations at the beginning of a case. We don't do that in Gwinnett County. And so when I have practiced here in Gwinnett and my clients are waiting for a divorce, I'm thinking, whew, if we were in Fulton, it would be faster. And so, the benefit of my experience practicing other places, again, bring best practices to Gwinnett so that we can have a decrease in crime, decrease in the mental health crisis, decrease in the court backlog. So all of these things are important. And I'm really happy to say that my previous experience has brought me to where I am now. God has truly ordered my steps. And because he has allowed me to already help the citizens of Gwinnett County. And prayerfully, I will be elected and will be able to do even more in that capacity.
And for our viewing and listening audience, let me tell you, I'm a former police officer from Pennsylvania. $501 for a felony is a very low threshold. In Georgia, that is very, very low. And it really has a huge effect on our lower income and our minority communities. That's a very low threshold. So it's good to learn and to know that.
Councilman Carter, if I may, just
Mhm.
when you're talking about your previous police experience versus here in Georgia, if I may share with your listeners something that's very interesting. In the United States, on average, 1 out of every 104 people is behind bars. In Georgia, because, for instance, like what you said, the threshold is different here. 1 out of every 33 people is behind bars.
Woo!
1 out of every 33 people. And Georgia currently has about 400,000 people under community supervision. We are #1 in the nation. #1 in the nation. And that's why we have to change what we're doing in terms of, helping to rehabilitate people so that it's not a constant burden on the system. And, taxpayers don't want to pay for these extra expenses when we could do things on the front end to prevent these types of activities. So.
Yeah, I mean, the average retail theft is going to put you in a felony. I'm just saying.
Right.
And a lot of states has a summary offense, so that's crazy. Well, we're getting close to wind up time here. I had so much more to ask.
Sorry, this is what happens when I start running my mouth. I'm so sorry.
No, this is great. This is absolutely great. Information makes us informed voters.
It does, truly.
Can you just let our viewers know how they can learn more about you and contribute to your campaign if that's necessary?
Oh, that's always necessary. That is always necessary. We have a lot of voters to reach out to. But again, I am Thassanee Gutter-Parker, and I am our servant leader for justice who is bridging the gap between the community and the court. And I do hope from, the stuff that we talked about today, the viewers can really see that I am about our community. I'm not just about talking about what I will do for the community, but I'm about walking the walk and talking the talk. My campaign platform is based upon what I have already done and what I will continue to do for the community. Truly, 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 I've had my feet on the ground and my ear to the heartbeat of the citizens of Gwinnett County. And that is the reason that God has ordered our steps and has given me a lot of these ideas so that I can help take us forward, us as a county. My website is GutterParkerForJudge.com, Gutter, Parker, Parker, FOR, Judge.com, GutterParkerForJudge.com. And we welcome all contributions, no matter how big or small. The maximum amount is $5,100, so we'll take that. Or if you have $51, we'll take that as well.
I think in the purpose of full disclosure, you have mentioned Dr. Cassandra Wan's name several times. I think you're kind of related to her.
Oh, yes, I am kind of related to the great Dr. Wanzo. Absolutely. Yeah. And I am so proud of her. She is a psychiatrist here in Georgia, and she does a lot with the mental health population, the prison population, and also my sister, Dr. Gutter, she's a psychologist. So the mental health crisis that we have here, the prison population, it's something that I'm passionate about because quite frankly, the members of my family are also passionate about it.
All right. I just wanted to make that announcement, but and also say that any other candidate is allowed to use our platform. Please call me. I'd be happy to have you on Issues and Answers because we want to hear from everybody. And if you don't contact us and get on our air, guess what? It's your fault. So here we are. I'm just saying. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you, Mrs. Gutter-Parker, and we here at WCEG and Issues and Answers wish you the best of luck in your campaign for Superior Court Judge in Gwinnett County.
Thank you so much for having me, and Gutter-Parker, be sure to mark her.
All righty. Hey, is that the BT Express? You take that to the voting polls?
There you go.
Anyway. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have such a full load of guests. I mean, very difficult to follow Mrs. Gutter-Parker, but we shall, and we will. We have a very interesting guest, and reminding you once again, you are listening to Issues and Answers on the WCEG Network. We thank all of you for joining us. Our next guest is an internationally known celebrity, and I'd like to welcome her to Issues and Answers. Let me give you a little bit of her background. Give her a chance to clear her throat and have a sip of water as we get into the program. Our next guest is, I'm going to try to talk fast because her background is lengthy. Miss Barbara R. Arnwine, Esquire. She is president and founder of the Transformative Justice Coalition. She is internationally renowned for contributions on critical justice issues, including the passage of the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1991 and the 2006 reauthorization of provisions of the Voting Rights Act. Currently, she also serves as co-chair and facilitator of the National Commission for Voter Justice, the Millennial Votes Matters convenings, and the Voter Rights Alliance. She was the head of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law from February 1989 until June of 2015 and holds the honorific title of President Emeritus. She has served as the Charles Hamilton Chair of the North Carolina Central University School of Law from 2016 to 2017 and has also taught at the Columbia University School of Law. And I have this highlighted. She also created the legendary Voting Rights Map of Shame. I've seen that in 2011, which exposed the new modern wave of voter suppression in the states. We're going to talk about that. Her groundbreaking civil rights and human rights advocacy has been honored with many prestigious awards. She is the radio host of Igniting Change and is a regular presence in the national media and is often quoted in the press. A graduate of Scripps College and Duke University School of Law, my son would love that, she continues to champion civil rights and racial justice issues nationally and internationally in the areas of housing and lending, women's rights, especially issues affecting intersectionality and African American women and girls, community development, employment, voting, education, policing, restructuring, close to my heart, and environmental justice. Ms. Arnwine's work also includes immigrant rights, judicial diversity, criminal justice reform, racial profiling, healthcare disparities, LGBTQIA rights, a prominent leader in the civil and human rights community. She fights for the preservation of affirmative action and diversity programs. She is also an outspoken voice for the need for reparations for African descendants in the Americas. Ms. Arnwine launched Igniting Change with Barbara Arnwine on March 15, 2015 on Radio 1's WOAL 1450 AM. Tune in. The hour-long show, which airs on Tuesdays from 12 to 1 p.m. EST, provides provocative and empowering information and discussion designed to ignite change and inspire action in achieving racial justice and social justice and equality. Sounds like this is Issues and Answers. Ms. Arnwine, welcome to WCEG, where we speak life to the community. We are so privileged to have you with us.
Well, I am honored to be on your show. Thank you so much for having me.
I think we've been trying to get you for quite a while. But you've been so busy.
Ooh, that's to put it mildly.
You are so busy. I had all these things prepared today for my program, and I jumped in and I said, oh my goodness, I went and looked at the news today and I read about Little Rock, Arkansas.
My.
And they're having an issue there at Central High School with and they're suing the governor in part because of their this ban the book stuff, and
Yes.
And it's basically against the law at Central High School in Little Rock to have a discussion about what is that, the Little Rock Nine or
Yes.
the Central High Nine? It's illegal. Yes. That's an integral part of our history. And I know talking about book bans is number one of the items on your agenda. I sort of read about freedom from freedom riders to freedom readers. Can you tell us a little bit about from freedom riders to freedom readers?
Well, that is a beautiful program that we've been doing jointly with the African American Policy Center, that which is, chaired by the magnificent and brilliant Kimberly Crenshaw. And it has been my pleasure to work with her for years. We co-taught at Columbia University, at UCLA. We teach legal surveys over civil rights law. And so that's been really good. But the African American Policy Forum, AAPF, has been absolutely centered to this whole battle around book banning. But let's be very clear, people. They're not just banning books. They don't want us to know our history. This is like going way back to the Frederick Douglass era, where they were saying that Blacks could not learn. Remember, he is loaned out to his cousin, to the master's cousin, and the wife teaches him how to read and write. And that results in his being banished from the household because Blacks were banned from reading and writing during that time. So this is just another era where they're attacking our literacy, attacking our right to know. And also, never forget, folks, that a big reason why they don't want to teach African American history is that a people who don't know their history are bound to repeat it. Mm-hmm. That you're bound to not even know how to wade your way out of the waters and out of the tunnels because you don't know what the maze looks like. But when you teach the maze, people understand how to directly dismantle racial, segregation and racial apartheid, and to understand how to fight racial injustice. They don't want that. They want us to be stagnant, to be inert, to be, just relegated into this, this subordinated status. And we were not going for it. Not 1 minute are we going for it.
Well, that's Arkansas I spoke about, and I'm going to jump right
but
back.
But it's not just Arkansas.
I know. I'm going to jump right into Texas because and this is the idiocy I've talked about on my program here often. Mm-hmm. They actually wrote a law banning critical race theory in grade school. We who have a little bit of education know that critical race theory is a graduate school elective. So is this another backhanded way to abridge the history of our country and erase the contributions of people of color in the fabric of our country?
Well, listen, it's not just Arkansas and Texas. It's Alabama, it's Oklahoma, it's evil Florida. It's, just some 28 states that are attempting to do this. And what is critical for those of us on the front line of this battle is that we got to understand there are ways to fight it. I was just reading a note from my delegate from my district here in Maryland, who was saying that one of the pieces of legislation that he's pushing, Norman, is a piece of legislation to make sure that everybody has freedom to learn, and that they can't ban books that go against, a state standard. In Illinois, they have actually passed legislation saying that no library can be compelled to ban books, no school can be compelled to ban books. So they've gone on the offensive. And part of having a good progressive mindset is to know that if you want to get from point A through point Z, that you got to know how to move forward. And moving forward means you're not always on the defense. You got to be on the offense. And so I am so happy to see, people standing up, but also I'm proud of a lot of the movements that I've noticed around the country to reestablish freedom schools. That was a big thing in the 1960s when they told Black folks that we couldn't learn how to vote, that we weren't going to be allowed to vote, and we couldn't learn how to use our vote. People set up freedom schools to counteract that. So in Florida, the churches have come together and have actually put together a statewide commission on teaching our own history. That's what it's called. Teaching our own history. And I'm, a member of that commission. I'm the only non-Floridian on the committee. Wow. And I love the work that people are doing because it's critical. Folks, every day in this country, some injustice is happening. It will continue to happen unless we fight it. And I'm sitting here while I'm talking to you, and up on my wall, I can't turn my camera to show it to you, is a beautiful painting of the Little Rock Nine that I'm looking at in my dining room. It is and that's there for me because it's a reminder every day of the fight that we have to wage.
Wow. This question is not on my list, but it came about because of your questioning.
Yes.
Schools.
Yes.
Charter schools.
Yes.
Public funds. Big thing down here in Georgia, where they're diverting money from public, they should go to public schools. And I remember, I'm sure our millennials that may not remember, that back when the push to integrate schools was becoming a fait accompli, that we had a movement in the South to create schools, private schools, that white children could go to, those who didn't want to go to school with Black children. And when I hear this big push here in Georgia for charter schools, it reminds me of history repeating itself.
Absolutely. They want to take me and your money. They want to take everybody's money, African-American people's money, and use it to only benefit a few people. Remember, prior to what most people don't know is that prior to the Civil War, education was largely private. There were no such thing as public schools. Public schools, when you look around the country, owe their origin really to the post-Civil War movement, because you had 4.5 million, quote, liberated people, the majority, some 90+%, who had been denied any form of education. And so the movement to open up education for everybody led to the opening of public education. So whites benefited, Blacks benefited, everybody benefited from the creation. I differed with the Obama administration. I was one of the civil rights leaders who absolutely opposed their charter school programming. I thought it was absolutely absurd, because the reality is, who does well with vouchers in charter schools? People who already have some advantage, who know how to manipulate, navigate the system already. It is not for the people who are at the bottom. And let's be very clear that the racial battle we're in right now is not just about equality between the races. It's about the fact that a whole lot of people want to create a permanent underclass. And they want us in that underclass, a whole lot of Black folks. And when you don't give quality education to everybody, that's what you end up with. When you kill affirmative action, as the Supreme Court tried to do in higher education in their Harvard case, when you do that, you're making sure that people won't be able to compete equally. So you're creating an underclass. That's why you don't want debt relief. That's why you don't want all these things. People, all of this is connected. And we got to be clear, it's already projected that it will take 300 years for African Americans to have economic equality with whites. 300 years. But when you start pushing back on all these programs and on public education and school and college admissions, on all of that, it's going to get worse. Folks, if we really want to stand up and fight for justice, then we got to take these issues on. I'm so glad you're raising them, because this is not pie in the sky. This is everyday reality that people are encountering. And we can have a public school. I went to public schools, right? I never stepped a foot in a private school from K through 11 because I skipped the 12th grade. From K, I am a total product of public schools. And yes, out of Los Angeles, segregated, racially segregated schools. But I'm going to tell you, I had teachers who loved me, who believed in me. They gave me a lot of love, gave me a lot of encouragement, had a lot of that around, even though it was hard. It was hard. I'm not going to pretend like, I just had, nothing. It was always assumed that there would be a Barbara Arnwine, the lawyer. Heck, there wasn't even an assumption there would be Barbara Arnwine, a high school graduate. That was never assumed. When I walked out of high school, I was the first graduate in my family. When I walked into college, I was the first college student in my family. When I went to the school counselor and said I wanted to go to college, he laughed at me, and told me that people from families like mine, poor, never went to college, and I could forget about it. And it was, it was teachers who, when I told them that, who stood up for me, that fought to get me out of that, what do they call it, vocational track, and onto a college track. But by then I was blessed because, I got accepted straight out of 11th grade into college, because somebody had a program and looked at me when I, applied to it inadvertently, frankly, that's just God painting. And when I applied to it, they looked at me and they said, this child won't make it if we don't intervene in her life right now. We can't give her a 12th grade. She might not get it through. So we're going to take her straight out of the 11th grade. And that was a beautiful thing. And they, people don't do that now, would never do it probably, even the same school. But I am so grateful that somebody took a chance on me. They took a risk with me. And we got to have that ability to see people's potential all the way.
I hope, folks, I hope you are listening. I hope you are listening. It makes me think about when we were talking real quick and going off the scale here. And I don't mean to get political, but I do know history.
Yes.
And I have a book about the American coup in 1898 in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Yes.
And my family's home. And the red shirts were the ones who not only killed Black people for trying to vote, but intimidated them and ran some of them out of town. And when you talk about going back and let's make America great again, and you see people not wearing red shirts, but red hats, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, this is why they don't want you to learn history. But anyway, let's talk about transformative justice, please. Can we? The Transformative Justice Coalition.
and let's tie that last point up. Let's just tie it up in a pretty red bow.
Come on.
Okay.
Come
But
on.
let's tie it up in a pretty purple bow. And folks, do you know that in areas where there were lynchings, massacres, mob violence, like we're talking about in Wilmington, Rosewood, Tulsa, you go through all those places. Do you know that to this day, that still impacts politics? That African-American voter registration and turnout in those areas historically to this day is lower than anywhere else in the country. Just as a point. So the past is not prologue, the past is present. And we need to understand that it has impact. Transformative Justice Coalition, 9 years old.
Yes. Come on.
We'll be 9 years old in June. I'm so happy. A number of years ago, I was blessed enough that I was able to say it's time to do something different in life. And I had been head of the Lawyers Committee for 26 years. And it's hard to step away from something, a sure thing, something you've done for years, something you know. But I said, I want to do a different kind of organization. I want to be much more about organizing communities for power. I don't want to just win the cases here and there. I want to win cases, but I also want to make sure that communities are powerful and that we're able to fight back against all kinds of injustice, not just on the voting field. So I I founded what was called the Transformative Justice Coalition. And it has been just rocking and rolling ever since. We do 85% of all our work that we do is in the area of voting rights. A good 80% of that work is with people ages 18 to 35, because we're about Gen Z and we're about young millennials, and we're about Alpha, Gen Alpha. We believe in the ascendancy and the necessity of a multiracial democracy. It's not just going to happen because we say it, we wish for it. We got to fight for it. Because there are people right now who'd rather take this thing, you said, back to the 1860s, 1850s, 1700s. Listen, they want to go back to anything but a democracy. They'll go to an oligarchy. They'll have a theocracy, anything. They just don't want to have sharing power with people of color. They're against that. But the demographics say that if you're going to have a true racially equal democracy, then if you're have a fair playing field, then you got a power share. But they don't want to do that. They want to dominate. They want white political dominance. And that's our job, is to stop that, is to fight for a multiracial democracy. Because what happens when you change the complexions of a government, you get more justice for everybody. You get more services for everybody. I just, Norman, it hurt my heart. I just came from the Supreme Court this morning, where they're arguing the Grand Pass case, which is basically a case, people, where states are arguing for the right to criminalize people who are homeless, so that if they find them sleeping in the street, they can put them in jail. So if they find that they don't have an address, they can put them in jail. So if they find that they are sleeping under a bridge, instead of feeling sorry and compassionate and trying to help folks, they can put them in jail. They'd rather spend the money incarcerating people than finding housing for people. And so I was at this argument this morning, and it just hurt me, because the lack of fair and affordable housing, which if every one of us know is a huge problem. We all have family members who can't afford the rent and can't find a place to live. And then they want to criminalize people. The fact that fair housing policy, having affordable housing is on the front burners of our society is a testament to a mislaid, waylaid government. Today, I always tell people, and they never want to hear this, but it's true. In the 435 members of Congress, there's only one person who is a Gen Z. If we were electing people proportionately to our representation of the population, guess how many people would be in that Congress? Not one. Guess how many more? Try 60. That's how, and when you talk about why they don't fight for climate control, why they don't want gun control, why they don't want, to regulate, violence against women, why they're all, trying to tell a woman what she can do with her body, all of this stuff, instead of building housing for the poor, that's because of that kind of misrepresentation, misalignment in government. The average state government, only less than 5% of its state legislature are people underneath the age of 40. Okay? That's why we have all these misalignments. That's why we need a real democracy.
You jumped into one of my final questions. So I'm going to ask it early. You're active with the LGBTQIA rights.
Yes.
And this plays into the next question, your question, what you said before. So I'm going to tie it all together. Our millennial and younger generations seem to be less impaired by, and I'm using the word impaired, by differences in sexuality than older generations. Will this cause a change in ingrained mores of older generations who now must concern themselves with a new and vibrant group of voters?
They have no choice, because the younger generation is becoming the largest voting cohort in this country. If they start voting the way they want to vote, and for who they want to vote, this government will change. There's already more women in Congress and more women in the Senate, and et cetera, because of the women's vote and being more targeted and smarter. We're seeing Dobbs voters making a difference in the way the states are looking. Young voters will do the same. And LGBTQIA rights, folks, don't ever believe that if they come for one group in the morning, they won't come for you in the afternoon. The reality is the same haters who hate transgender people, who hate gay people, the same people who hate, quote, immigrants and people from the border, quote, all of these people, they are the same people who hate us. Don't you for a moment think that insulates you? It doesn't. And I just, we are sitting here right now while they're attacking, all our civil rights acts. Some 23 state attorney generals are attacking, our private right of action, the enforce, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and every other civil rights act. Folks, don't be deceived. You gotta really stay on top of what's happening. That's why I'm grateful for your having me on this show today. Go to tjcoalition.org, tjcoalition.org. Keep up with us. Become part of our battles, because we're going to be in your states battling. TJC, we votercade. We come into your states. We're going to be doing concerts. We're going to be doing all kinds of things to turn out the vote. So become part of us. Work with us.
Wow. Councilor Arnwine, I visited the Transformative Justice Coalition website.
Yes.
And I was surprised to learn that there are 72 forms of voter suppression. Most of us are only aware of a few, but 72? Can you enlighten us about the most egregious forms of voter suppression? Wow. Got a pamphlet.
Yes. Yes, people, you can get the pamphlet from us. There are, and also you can go to our website and look at them, the 72 forms of voter suppression. Folks, when every day people go to the polls, and what do they find out? That there's not enough polling places. They find out that polling places have been moved. when it should have been one place, it's somewhere else, and they don't even know how to find a new place. They go there and there's not enough staff. The machines aren't working. They go to places and so you have poorly trained staff. You want to register to vote. Most people don't even think about registering to vote until you're within 2 weeks of the elections. Most states don't allow you to register to vote within those 2 weeks. They have these 30-day limitations, most of them. So we are, so one of the forms of voter suppression is saying that you can't have same-day voter registration. Guess what? There are at least 10 to 12 states that do have same-day voter registration. So you can't say there's something wrong with it if all these states are using it, but guess what states they are? They're mostly white states, states with heavily white populations. They don't want you to register on Sundays. They don't want you to be able to vote on Sundays. Why? Because Black folks and brown folks and Native American folks tend to do best. They have higher turnouts when they can early vote and when they can register through, automatic voter registration or same day voter registration. They do better, and they know that, and they don't want us to do better. There's so many forms, having these strict absentee vote deadlines, not allowing you to even have an absentee ballot, saying that you can't get help to mark your absentee ballot, or in Georgia to apply for it. All of these kinds of limitations that we fight every day in the courts, and we win a lot of these battles. But at the same time, we got to be out there helping people, educating people, so that they can navigate through all of these evil things. And of course, well, the most evil was in your state, where they tried to ban people from giving out water or food. And you know why they did that, don't you, Norman? They saw my group, and they saw Black Voters Matters, and they saw us at the polls helping people who were cold and needed hot tea. They saw us helping people who were in those 3-hour lines and wanted to get out and get something to eat. They saw us helping people, and they decided that they were going to do this. They even called us in 2020. They actually called us while we were out there, working with people in 2022, and told us they were going to pass this legislation because they were mad at us. They told us, they said they're going to put us in jail if we kept doing it. And we said, no, you can't, because you don't have any law saying that we can't do it. So they passed the law. So I want people to understand that it is really, really real that folks will battle you when you're trying to just do the right thing.
And as a point of clarity, let me just say, as a Georgia voter, I remember standing in line for about 5 hours to early vote.
Lord
and
Jesus.
we all got out there about a little before 6 in the morning. I didn't get to vote till about 11. But there were cars that drove through. They were unmarked. They had no campaign materials or anything. And they would roll the windows down, and they would just say, does anybody want water? They had snacks. They weren't campaigning. They were not campaigning.
We weren't.
And here's the point I want to drive home. Because of a lack of polling places, it is not unusual to stand in line for 4 to 6 hours to vote. Fainting from dehydration or lack of eating is a real danger. Voting should not be dangerous. Now, since the largest lines seem to be in low income and African-American neighborhoods, this is de facto voter suppression of a particular people. Will the John Lewis Voting Rights Act address this?
Yes. Folks, there are 2 really huge acts pending in Congress, and we need both. The Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. We call them the sword and the shield. One will force change aggressively by coming up with uniform standards, saying that you must have early voting, saying that you can't tell people who were formerly incarcerated that they can't vote for federal elections, that would have, all these new standards to make it easier for people to vote and make it uniform so there's no confusion from state to state. Then you would have the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act that would say if you want to change any law, if you want to move a polling place, if you want to go from a system that has 9 polling places to only 3, that you're going to have to show that it's non-discriminatory, that you're going to have to prove that it doesn't hurt people, that you can't make these changes without notifying the public that these changes are going to be requested, that the Justice Department or court is going to have to review those changes in jurisdictions with a history of voting discrimination. Remember in the Shelby case in 2013, when they struck down Section 4B, which was the coverage formula that told you what states were subjected to what we call pre-clearance to review before they could come up with one of these acts. Chief Justice Roberts said, there's no evidence of current discrimination in voting. Well, honey, since he said that, everybody's been discriminating. They've gone like a discrimination free for all. And so what we're going to do is have Congress stop that, because all Congress has to do is pass these laws. And the Supreme Court can't unpass the law. They got to, unless they find the law is somehow unconstitutional, but these new laws will change that. And I'm telling you, folks, we need the Freedom to Vote Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Don't you dare vote for anybody without asking them if they are on the side of these acts. Are they going to vote for these acts? Don't you dare put them up there just because they say they like you, or that they say, I like your baby, or they just up there kissing and, and hanging out. No. Be very clear about this. We don't want you in office if you will not support the Freedom to Vote Act. We don't want you in office if you will not support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. There are candidates running for office right now who have said they won't do it. You need to know who they are. Ask them. Don't be talking about, some person that you like them because you think that they're hip or cool. I want you to be on them about, are they fighting for your rights or are they fighting against your rights? And if they don't want you to have freedoms, then you don't want them to be in office, because nobody guarantees them a shot. And they're not guaranteed a spot in office. Your vote is what guarantees them that.
I just went to a convention, not a convention, but an event for a certain political group of African Americans who support people who gutted the Voting Rights Act and treated them like they were Saint Teresa. These are people here in Georgia. So I as you said, people need to pay attention.
Yes.
Really, really need to pay attention. I see we have a question here in the chat. One says, why is the Voting Rights Act not a permanent fixture instead of having to be renewed periodically? I think you just touched on that needs to be the law of the land.
Right. And be very aware, just like you had that affirmative action case that says that you can't have a race conscious policy forever. It's the same theory that they've applied to the Voting Rights Act. And that's because this country is in racial denial. And the Supreme Court's at the front of that, trying to act like there's no persistent, ongoing, everyday reality of societal discrimination. We need a better court, folks. We need new laws, and we need new standards of review by the Supreme Court.
And here's one that should strike the heart of many people here today. Laws prevent convicted felons to vote, but the same lawmakers will allow a person convicted to run for president of this country.
Those are the ironies, because remember, folks think that when they're banning, quote, convicted felons, they think they're banning Black folks. I mean, remember that all these felony disenfranchisement laws came out of the post-civil rights era. Again, Again, folks, I mean, they came out of the post emancipation from the Civil War, out of the post-Civil War era. If you never read Douglas Blackman's Slavery by Another Name, read it. If there's a few books people mandatorily should read in this country. That's one of them. Slavery by Another Name. It talks about what happened to Black folks once the Civil War was over. How did you end up with this recriminalization system where they got free labor to build all these railroads you look at? They were built by formerly incarcerated by incarcerated Black folks. Chain gangs. Folks, these were not, they picked people up off the street, didn't give them a real trial, didn't even tell their families, and then put them in these chain gangs. It was all a way of the South regaining the free labor it lost from slavery. And, so that's why you can't just, okey doke and say, oh, well, those people, they never should have done the crime. They should have known they were going to have to do the time. Well, once you get out of jail, when are you unshackled from that obligation to society? Remember that there's a theory called civil death. Civil death, meaning that once you commit a crime, you're considered dead to society. That's what felon disenfranchisement is. But the beauty of the Freedom to Vote Act is it says you can't ban them. It says no state can ban somebody from voting, even if they have had a felony conviction. It assumes that you get a second chance. Don't let these candidates run around about, I passed the Second Chance Act, when they're against reinstating people who were formerly incarcerated. Please, folks, we got a long ways to go. Let's use that mother wit that we were rocked to bed with so many nights.
I want to go real quick. This is a bugaboo of mine. You just talked about racial denial.
Woo!
I want to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Oh,
they have become the four-letter word of what I call the idiot fringe of our country. I call it the idiot fringe because many believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion are the reason for the barge crashing into Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge. You are a noted champion of affirmative action. What is your take on the redefining of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
It's the same old game, folks. When I don't know if most people know that at the end of the Civil War, there was something called the Freedmen's Bureau.
Yes.
The Freedmen's Bureau. It was designed to help all those millions of Black folks who no longer had a home. They were homeless. They were thrown off. If the master said, if you're not going to do my land for free, I'm going to throw you off the land post-slavery because I can't work you for free anymore. So we had that whole incident happen where they threw people. So we had millions of Black folks who left the land, millions of Black folks who were thrown off the land, and they were in need of help. They were in need of, housing assistance. They were in need of housing. They were in need of land ownership. They need to learn how to work crops and all kinds of stuff for themselves. Well, the President Johnson, who succeeded Abraham Lincoln, said that the Freedmen's Bureau was a form of reverse discrimination against whites. That's what he said back in the 1860s, 70s, folks. Don't be fooled. This is a playbook. It's an old playbook that whenever Blacks make advances, you claim that it's at the expense of whites. You're just like in Virginia, they had a law that if you freed a Black person from slavery, you had to pay into a fund for poor white people to make sure that they were taken care of. Because that Black person might be a competitor for jobs, etc. This is the mentality. It's always been the zero-sum mentality that if you help Blacks or if you give Blacks a fair chance, not even talk about help, but give them a fair chance to prove who they are and to do to the best of their abilities, that somehow that hurts whites. And, Julianne Malveaux calls it what? White economic envy. It's all of these realities. And we got to be smart enough to know when we see what we're seeing. It's the old playbook. When it was affirmative action, they said the same thing. DEI, they said the same thing. How in the world does a foreign ship from a foreign country that runs into a bridge somehow has something to do with Black folks' DEI? They hit a bridge in a Black city, Baltimore, and suddenly, because the mayor, ran out in his, fastest clothes, they come out, he didn't look like he was dressed neat enough. I mean, listen, folks, we see this nonsense, but see, they don't want to take on the big issues, because you know what the caucus of Black leaders are saying in Maryland, the caucus of African American leaders, they're saying rename that bridge. Because Francis Scott Key was a racist. Come on now, folks. You got to know he was a slaveholder and he was a racist. And they're saying, okay, the bridge is not down. Let's name it for somebody who was a hero, like a Perrin Mitchell, who had a purple star for when he served in Congress because of all the hell he took in the war. Come on, folks. Let's not perpetuate mythologies. Let's not perpetuate injustice in the renaming of a bridge. So instead of talking about this nonsense about DEI, because everything's DEI now. Mm-hmm. If a truck hits another truck, it must have been DEI. I mean, that boogeyman. They actually, Christopher Rufo, who is the big right winger who against critical race theory and DEI, he actually said he was going to make it a boogeyman, and he has. And so that it becomes the excuse for any thing you don't like that Black people are doing. If a Black person gets promoted, it had to be DEI. If a Black person does well and wins a contest, wins it honestly, it had to be DEI. I mean, it's become a boogeyman, but we can sweep it under the rug if you want to. But folks, we got to really fight it head on, and we got to call it what it is, nothing but opposition to racial progress, like it always has been, and that we deserve the right to have programs that help us to combat that 300 years I was telling you about. No economic justice. We're not going to get there if we don't come up with programs that I call interveners and accelerators. That's all DEI is.
Can I talk about the boogeyman for a minute?
Oh yeah, the boogeyman.
We're almost running against time, but I got to get this in because this, I think you can really contribute to this. Whenever activists speak of healthcare disparities, yes, it appears that predominantly African Americans are interviewed or spoken of. Few ever speak to the impoverished of Appalachia or those or Native American reservations. The worst example is the people of Appalachia, who are predominantly Caucasian, were taught to vote against anyone supporting the Affordable Care Act. By calling it Obamacare, it created the misconception that this act was of, by, and for African Americans. Due to ignorance, these people, and thousands in Georgia right here, voted against their own interests. Thus, medical care in rural areas of America is scarce due to a lack of funding. With education and better exposure of who benefits from the Affordable Care Act, change support of this racist policy of suppressing medical benefits for those who need it.
White, poor people have to learn that rich white people aren't their friends, that's not who their friends are, that they have to learn that they're not the same. I mean, all these people who think that, oh, I love this politician because I'm sure if he were near me, he would come into my house and have a drink with me. All this fantasizing that white poor people do. I just think that we have changed the concept of white identity, where whites don't think that in order to advance that they got to subordinate other people, where they really understand that we can all advance together. They just got to believe that, but they don't. They've been taught that that's just not possible. And we got to unteach that. And I think that that's where the real failing in our society is. And politicians are cowards. They won't talk about it. They're not going to, they're cowards. And of all parties, they're not going to talk about it. And then they get mad when somebody like me or somebody else talks about it. But it would be a better world if whites talk to other whites about it, but they don't. And they need to, because frankly, the people who are poor all have a lot in common. Who died from people from COVID, who suffered. People want to just think it was only older people. And they don't understand a whole lot of very young, healthy, and even middle-aged people died because COVID killed because of lack of health care. And lack of health care will kill you. I actually know, frankly, a gentleman whose next door neighbor voted against Obama voted for Trump in 2016 against Hillary because he didn't want Obamacare. And he was dying from cancer. He had a serious form of cancer. And he actually told his friend, I know that this means I might die, but I can't be supporting that Obamacare.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right. But that's how deep the identity thing is, right? He hates, he's so mad about, they got them so racially confused, so racially tied in a knot that they can't even undo it to protect themselves. We have to really fight to change that concept. I was happy today at that Supreme Court. I saw a lot of poor white folks out there talking about we need housing, better housing policy, talking about, their connections to, poor people of all races. I was happy to see it because you don't see that often. And I saw it because Reverend Barber and others are building the Poor People's Campaign. And we need to do more of that in our society. And we need to make the society fairer for everybody.
I got a little note in the box that says 2024 is Black Maternal Health Week. I guess
that's right.
Right now. All right.
And thank you who put that in the box, because that's something that we have to make a priority as Black folks. We can't be allowing all these beautiful mothers to die, even post childbirth, because we have poor maternal health care. Remember, Serena Williams almost died from, even though she had all the money in the world, because doctors look at us and they don't see us as humans. They think that we somehow can take more pain than others. They don't listen to us. All that racial prejudice dominates in the medical profession. And so as a result, a whole lot of Black babies die and a whole lot of Black women die. In fact, one of the mythologies that people don't get straight is that people believe that somehow women's reproductive choice is a bad thing for Black folks. Honey, do you know that in the states like Mississippi and other states that have passed these really wicked no-choice laws, that Black women are dying at 3 times the rate that they were dying at before? We're killing ourselves. They're killing us. We're being killed by these policies. So we need fair reproductive rights. We need the ability of a woman to make the best choice for herself. But also we remember Planned Parenthood and the other ones just give you good health care. And you need that. So don't fall again for the okie doke. We really, really need people to save our Black women and give them their reproductive rights.
Oh my gosh.
I know there's so much to talk about.
I think we could go on another hour here, but I think we kind of like up against the clock.
Yeah.
And I know there's so much more we could talk about, so much more. But can you just encapsulate how our viewers and listeners can join your fight or even donate to your organization?
You can join us by going, and you can donate to us by going to the same site, tjcoalition.org, tjcoalition.org, and you can join us, and you can become part of our mobilization to get out voters, to register voters, to get out voters, because it doesn't make any difference if you register them if you don't turn them out to vote. And you can also, frankly, if you're between the ages of 18 and 35, you want to apply to become part of our classes. That we train 100 young people every year to be voting rights leaders. And guess what, Norman? Every dime of that training is free. We fly people in from throughout the country, and we train them, we pay everything, and when they leave, we give them a monetary stipend to take home, to pay for their books, to pay for their tuition, whatever. We just want people to understand that we love our young people, and we believe in them. And if you believe and you love them, then you invest in them. And that's what we do. So if you know young people who opt to come to this training, encourage them to go to tjcoalition.org and apply for our class that we'll be training in September. We have a new class that will start training September 12th through 16th.
Wow. Well, there's so much information, and I personally would love to have you back here on the WCEG, particularly before we'll be going on hiatus soon, but definitely before the next the presidential election. Definitely before then. I know you're busy, but if you have the time, we would love to have you back here.
Well, this is the
absolutely.
work. This is the work I have to do. This is the work that I must do. So please have me back.
We certainly will. And I thank you, WCEG, thank you, and I'm sure our public thanks you. This program will be archived on YouTube. We're going to put it out there. It'll go out today, tomorrow, and it's going to be out there for everybody to see at any time. But we thank you so much. You've helped so many of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for bringing this word to the public. Thank you.
That was Counselor Barbara J. Arnwine, and we will have her back. When we have her back, we'll have her back. Let me close out today, folks, as I always close out. Some of you know this, some of you don't. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. Ladies and gentlemen, we have WCEG and Issues and Answers. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks, right here with me on WCEG. Thank you.